The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional advice regarding real estate, construction, legal zoning, or financial investment. Converting a garage into an accessory dwelling unit, or ADU, involves complex building codes, structural engineering requirements, and local municipal regulations that vary significantly by jurisdiction. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence, consult with licensed contractors, structural engineers, and local planning departments, and seek professional legal or financial counsel before commencing any construction project or making significant financial commitments. Any mentions of potential value or cost are based on historical trends and specific case studies, which may not reflect your individual circumstances or local market conditions. Right now, you are likely sitting on a hidden asset worth upwards of $150,000, but you are currently using it to store a rusted lawnmower, 3 cardboard boxes of holiday decorations you haven't opened since 2019, and a car that is depreciating in value every single second. In the current American economy, the traditional 2-car garage has become the most expensive storage unit in history. While the average American family struggles with rising mortgage rates and a catastrophic shortage of affordable housing, 400 to 500 square feet of prime real estate is sitting vacant right behind your kitchen wall. The reality is that for many homeowners, the difference between financial stagnation and a high-yield, cash-flowing asset is simply a garage door and a concrete slab. However, most people who attempt this conversion fail before they even pull a permit because they treat it like a weekend DIY bedroom project rather than a sophisticated residential development. They underestimate the structural requirements, they ignore the moisture barrier necessities of a standard garage slab, and they end up with a space that feels like a finished basement rather than a luxury studio. This is the ultimate mistake that turns a potential goldmine into a legal and financial nightmare. The American housing landscape is undergoing its most significant shift since the post-war suburban boom of the 1950s. Historically, the 2-car garage was a symbol of middle-class success, designed for an era where land was cheap and the car was king. But historical trends show that as urban density increases and the cost of living outpaces wage growth, the utility of the garage is being fundamentally redefined. We are seeing a massive wave of legislative changes across the United States, from the groundbreaking SB 9 and SB 10 laws in California to similar zoning revolutions in Oregon, Washington, and even parts of the Midwest. These changes are effectively ending single-family zoning as we know it, allowing homeowners to unlock the density of their own lots. This masterclass is designed to move you past the surface-level ideas of just putting up some drywall and a space heater. We are going to break down the exact architectural, financial, and structural framework required to transform that cold, drafty box into a high-end, fully functional accessory dwelling unit that can serve as a rental property, a guest house, or a multi-generational living space for aging parents or adult children. The problem this solves for you today is the crisis of space and the crisis of cash flow. If you were to try and buy a new property today to use as a rental, you would be looking at high interest rates and inflated purchase prices. But by utilizing the land you already own and the foundation that is already poured, you are essentially bypassing the most expensive hurdles of real estate development. We are going to explore how to navigate the specific technical challenges unique to 2-car garages, such as the common 5-inch step-down from the main house to the garage floor, the lack of integrated plumbing stacks, and the thermal bridging issues inherent in garage door headers. We will examine case studies where homeowners have seen significant shifts in their property's valuation based on the addition of habitable square footage, which historical trends suggest is often valued higher than the cost of the conversion itself. This 10-part masterclass is your comprehensive roadmap through the labyrinth of ADU development. We are going to deep dive into the initial feasibility phase, where you will learn how to read your local zoning code like a developer, identifying setbacks, lot coverage ratios, and the crucial distinction between an attached and a detached ADU. We will move into the structural phase, discussing why you cannot simply build on top of a standard garage slab without verifying its thickness and the presence of a vapor barrier, as most garages were never intended to be heated, living environments. We will provide step-by-step details on the wet wall strategy, a technique used by professional builders to consolidate plumbing for kitchens and bathrooms in a way that minimizes the need for expensive trenching through your existing concrete. Furthermore, we will address the psychological and aesthetic aspects of the conversion. A common failure in garage ADUs is that they often feel small or claustrophobic because of the low ceilings and lack of natural light. We will demonstrate how to use vaulted ceilings, skylights, and strategic window placement to make 400 square feet feel like 800. We will also tackle the massive hurdle of utility separation, explaining the potential outcomes of sharing a single electrical meter versus installing a subpanel or a completely separate service drop. We will look at the long-term maintenance implications and the insurance shifts that occur when you transition from a single-family home to a multi-unit property. The goal here is to give you the depth of knowledge that usually costs thousands of dollars in consulting fees. We are not just looking at pretty pictures, we are looking at the blueprint of a successful conversion. By the end of this series, you will understand the nuances of the grandfather clause for non-conforming structures, the pros and cons of mini-split HVAC systems for small-scale living, and how to design a kitchen that provides full functionality without overwhelming the limited footprint. We are entering an era where your backyard is your best investment. This is about taking control of your property's potential and participating in the infill housing movement that is sweeping across the nation. Whether you are looking to generate passive income to offset your mortgage, or you need a dignified space for a family member, the two-car garage conversion is the most efficient path to that goal. Let's begin by dismantling the myths surrounding these projects and looking at the hard data of what it actually takes to build a legal, safe, and beautiful ADU in 2026. This is the first step in your transition from a homeowner to a small-scale developer, and the journey starts with understanding the ground you are standing on right now. We will look at the historical data of ADU permits in major U.S. cities and analyze how those who succeeded avoided the common pitfalls of unpermitted work and structural shortcuts. This is the masterclass on the future of American housing, and it starts in your garage. To understand the true potential of your two-car garage in 2026, we have to look at the hard data of the American housing market over the last 3 years. The cost of traditional single-family homes has created a barrier to entry that is historically unprecedented. This has led to a surge in what urban planners call infill development. Imagine a homeowner named Marcus in Austin, Texas. Marcus bought a standard suburban home in 2018. By 2026, his property value has increased, but his property taxes and the general cost of living have also scaled upward. Marcus has a 480 square foot two-car garage that, for 6 years, did nothing but collect dust and hold a vehicle he rarely drives because he now works remotely. By deciding to convert that garage into a legal accessory dwelling unit, Marcus isn't just adding a room. He is essentially creating a secondary income stream or a flexible living space on a footprint he already pays for every month. When we look at case studies from cities like Los Angeles, Seattle, and Portland, the historical trends show that a permitted, well-executed garage conversion can add significant market value to a residential property. However, the path to that value is paved with technical requirements that most homeowners overlook. The first and most critical technical hurdle is the floor. Most American garages are built with a sloped concrete slab, designed to drain fluids out toward the driveway. This slope might be subtle, perhaps 1/8 of an inch per foot, but over a 20-foot span, that is a 2.5-inch difference. You cannot simply lay vinyl plank flooring over a sloped, raw concrete garage floor and call it a living room. If you do, your furniture will sit at an angle, your baseboards will never align, and you will feel the pitch every time you walk across the room. The solution used by professional ADU developers involves a process called self-leveling underlayment or, in more extreme cases, pouring a new thin-set topping slab. But before you even think about leveling, you have to address the moisture. A standard garage slab in a house built in the 1970s or 80s likely lacks a vapor barrier underneath the concrete. In a garage, this is fine. In a living space, the concrete acts like a sponge, pulling moisture up from the earth through capillary action. If you trap that moisture under laminate or hardwood flooring, you are inviting a mold colony to move in within 6 months. Professional builders in 2026 use a high-performance epoxy moisture vapor barrier or a dimpled polyethylene membrane before any subfloor or leveling compound is applied. This creates a thermal break and a moisture seal, ensuring the air quality in the ADU remains healthy and the floor remains dry. Step by step, the floor preparation looks like this. First, you perform a calcium chloride test or a relative humidity probe test to see exactly how much moisture is moving through that slab. Next, you grind the surface of the concrete to open the pores, allowing the vapor barrier or leveling agent to bond mechanically. Then you apply the barrier and the leveling compound to create a perfectly flat, horizontal plane. This foundation is where your ADU either succeeds or fails. Without this, you are just living in a dressed-up garage. Now let's talk about the garage door itself. This is the biggest architectural challenge of a two-car conversion. In the United States, the garage door is typically a 16-foot wide opening. When you remove that door, you are left with a massive structural void. Many homeowners make the mistake of just framing it in with a giant wall and a single small window, which ends up looking like a cheap patch job from the street. This ruins what developers call curb appeal. In 2026, the gold standard for high-end ADU conversions is the use of glass. Replacing that 16-foot door with a large-scale sliding glass door system, or a series of French doors with sidelights transforms the entire aesthetic. It floods the small footprint with natural light, making 400 square feet feel like an expansive loft. Take the case study of a family in Denver, Colorado. They converted their detached two-car garage into a short-term rental unit. Instead of a standard wall where the garage door used to be, they installed an insulated, black-framed aluminum folding door system. During the summer, the entire front of the ADU opens up to a private patio. This blur between indoor and outdoor space is a primary reason why ADUs are fetching premium rents in the current market. By treating the garage door opening as a feature rather than a problem, you maximize the psychological volume of the space. Beyond the aesthetics, there is the massive issue of the envelope. Garage walls are typically framed with 2x4 studs and often lack any insulation. To meet the 2026 International Residential Code, or the specific energy mandates like California's Title 24, you have to significantly upgrade the R value of these walls. This isn't just about sticking fiberglass bats in the wall. You have to consider the headers and the corners where heat escape is most common. Many high-efficiency conversions now use spray foam insulation because it provides both a high R value and an airtight seal in one application. This is crucial because garages are notoriously drafty. If you don't seal the top plates and the bottom plates where the wood meets the concrete, your heating and cooling costs will be astronomical, and the unit will never feel comfortable in the peak of winter or summer. Imagine if you spent $80,000 on a conversion, only to find that the unit is drafty and smells like exhaust from the driveway. This is where the mechanical systems come into play. In a two-car garage, you don't have the luxury of a mechanical closet for a massive furnace. The 2026 trend is almost exclusively toward ductless mini-split heat pumps. These systems are incredibly efficient, provide both heating and cooling, and require only a small 3-inch hole through the wall for refrigerant lines. They allow for precise climate control in a small space without the need for bulky ductwork that would lower your already limited ceiling height. But even with the best HVAC, you have to think about the ceiling. Most garages have an open rafter system or a flat ceiling at 8 or 9 feet. If your local building code allows, one of the most impactful things you can do is vault the ceiling. By removing the collar ties or the ceiling joists and reinforcing the rafters, often with a ridge beam, you can open the space up to the roofline. This adds vertical volume that changes the entire character of the conversion. It allows for the addition of skylights, which are essential in an ADU where you might have limited windows on the sidewalls due to privacy concerns or proximity to the property line. We are seeing a massive shift in how these spaces are being utilized. Historical trends indicate that while many started as simple guest rooms, they are now becoming primary residences for those looking to downsize. This means the plumbing has to be robust. Unlike a main house where plumbing is usually buried deep under a crawlspace or basement, garage plumbing often requires cutting into the existing slab. This is a labor-intensive and messy process. You have to trench through 4 inches of reinforced concrete to lay your waistlines for the toilet, shower, and kitchen sink. If your garage is lower than the main sewer line of the house, you might even need a macerating pump or an ejector pit. These are the technical details that can add $5,000 to $10,000 to a budget instantly, and they are why a professional site survey is non-negotiable. As we move forward, we have to look at how to pack a full kitchen, a full bathroom, a laundry area, and a living sleeping area into a space that was originally designed to hold 2 SUVs. It requires a level of surgical precision in design that a standard home doesn't need. Every inch counts. Every cabinet must be intentional. And most importantly, every utility must be planned before the first stud is ever nailed into place. But what happens when you realize your electrical panel is already full, and the city demands a separate water meter for the ADU? That is where the real complexity begins, and it is exactly what we are going to untangle next. The infrastructure hidden behind your walls could be your biggest obstacle or your greatest advantage. If you don't know how to navigate the utility requirements, you could be looking at a $20,000 surprise from your local power company. We are about to dive into the specifics of the wet wall design and the electrical load calculations that will determine if your garage can actually handle the power needs of a modern living space. Because if you can't power the stove and the AC at the same time, you don't have an ADU, you have a very expensive storage shed. In the next section, we tackle the nightmare of permits and the hidden costs of the utility grid. The utility grid is the invisible skeleton of your ADU, and in 2026, it is the single most common reason projects stall at the finish line. Most American homeowners assume that because their garage already has a light bulb and a single outlet for a garage door opener, they are halfway to a functional living space. This assumption is a catastrophic error. A standard two-car garage is typically wired with a single 15-amp or 20-amp circuit. To run a modern ADU, you are looking at a required load that includes an electric range, a water heater, a mini-split HVAC system, a microwave, a refrigerator, and potentially a washer and dryer stack. Historical trends in residential electrical codes now often require a minimum of 60 to 100 amps for a detached secondary dwelling. If your main house only has a 100-amp or 150-amp main service panel, which is common in homes built before the year 2000, you are going to hit a hard limit the moment you try to add a second kitchen. Imagine a homeowner in Phoenix, Arizona, named Sarah. Sarah has a beautiful 1950s ranch-style home and wants to convert her attached two-car garage into a rental suite to help cover her rising property taxes in 2026. She hires a contractor who starts framing. But when the electrician arrives, he delivers the news that her main panel is already maxed out. To power the ADU, Sarah now faces a $5,000 main service panel upgrade, which also requires the local utility company to potentially pull new, thicker wires from the transformer at the street to her house. This is what we call a hidden infrastructure cost. To avoid Sarah's situation, your first step must be a load calculation performed by a licensed electrician. They will tally the existing demand of your main house and determine if there is enough headroom to feed a subpanel in the garage. If there isn't, you have to factor in the cost of a heavy-up before you ever buy a single sheet of drywall. Beyond the electrical capacity, there is the massive logistical hurdle of the water and sewer connection. In 2026, many U.S. municipalities have streamlined the permitting process, but the physical reality of plumbing remains unchanged. A garage floor is a solid slab of concrete, usually 4 inches thick with rebar or wire mesh reinforcement. To install a toilet, you need a 3-inch waistline buried beneath that slab with a specific downward slope of 1/4 inch per foot. If your garage is 50 feet away from the main sewer cleanout of your house, that pipe needs to drop over 12 inches in elevation by the time it reaches the connection point. If the math doesn't work out, if the garage floor is too low relative to the city sewer main, you are looking at a sewage ejector pump system. These systems are reliable, but they require their own dedicated electrical circuit and a vented pit, adding complexity and maintenance requirements to your ADU. Step by step, the professional approach to plumbing in a two-car garage involves what we call the wet wall strategy. This is where you align the kitchen sink, the bathroom vanity, the toilet, and the shower along a single interior wall. By clustering all the fixtures, you minimize the amount of concrete that needs to be jackhammered out. You create one main trench through the slab, lay your pipes, and then backfill with gravel and new concrete. This strategy can save thousands in labor and material costs. Case studies of successful conversions in high-density areas like San Diego show that homeowners who use a centralized wet wall are able to allocate those saved funds into higher-end finishes like quartz countertops or custom cabinetry, which significantly impacts the rental value or resale potential of the property. Then we must address the most overlooked utility of all, the water heater. In a 400-square-foot space, a traditional 50-gallon tank water heater is a waste of precious square footage. It takes up a closet that could otherwise be used for clothing or pantry storage. The 2026 standard for garage conversions is the electric tankless water heater. These units are about the size of a large suitcase and can be mounted on the wall, often inside a cabinet or even under the kitchen sink. However, there is a trade-off. A tankless unit requires a massive amount of instantaneous electrical power, often needing 2 or 3 40-amp double-pole breakers. This brings us back to the electrical panel issue. If you choose tankless to save space, you must ensure your panel can handle the surge. Alternatively, many developers are moving toward heat pump water heaters, which are incredibly efficient and can be tucked into a small corner, though they do require proper ventilation and a way to handle condensate drainage. Now, let's pivot to the legal and bureaucratic reality of 2026. The term ADU has become a buzzword, but every city has its own flavor of red tape. In some jurisdictions, you might be required to provide a replacement parking space for the 2 spots you are removing from the garage. This might mean paving a portion of your front yard or widening your driveway. If you ignore this requirement and build an unpermitted unit, you are creating a massive liability. Historical trends show that unpermitted conversions are often discovered during the sale of a home, leading to forced demolition or expensive retroactive permitting fees that can exceed the original cost of the build. Furthermore, you must understand the distinction between a junior ADU and a standard ADU. A JADU is typically created within the existing walls of a primary residence, such as an attached garage, and is limited to 500 square feet. The advantage of a JADU in many states is that it often has lower impact fees and can share a bathroom with the main house, though most people prefer a private one. A detached ADU, where you are converting a standalone garage, is treated more like a new house and may require its own separate address and utility meters. This brings us to the question of the submeter. In 2026, if you plan to rent the unit to a third party, you likely want to know exactly how much electricity and water they are using. Installing private submeters allows you to bill the tenant accurately without the headache of split utility disputes. Imagine if you finished the project and then received a cease and desist order from your homeowners association. Even if your state laws have eased ADU restrictions, some HOAs still have architectural guidelines that dictate the type of roofing, siding, and windows you can use. If your garage conversion uses horizontal vinyl siding but your main house and the rest of the neighborhood use brick, you could be in violation of your CC and RS. The successful path involves a pre-application meeting with your local planning department. This is a step where you take a rough sketch of your floor plan and your site map to a city planner who can point out potential issues with setbacks or fire codes before you spend money on formal architectural drawings. As we peel back the layers of this masterclass, the complexity of the internal layout becomes the next great challenge. We have discussed the skeleton and the nerves, the plumbing and the power. But how do you actually live in 20 by 20 feet? How do you create a space that doesn't feel like a studio apartment in a basement, but like a luxury suite? The secret lies in the floor plan zonation. There is a specific way to orient the sleeping area so it feels private from the kitchen, and a specific way to utilize vertical space that most people never consider. We are moving from the infrastructure into the architectural soul of the conversion. The next phase of this deep dive will reveal the specific floor plan layouts that are dominating the 2026 market. We will look at the exact dimensions needed for a functional galley kitchen versus an L-shaped kitchen in a small footprint. More importantly, we are going to tackle the biggest aesthetic killer of garage conversions: the floor-to-ceiling transition. If you don't get the transition from the driveway to the ADU entrance right, everyone will always know they are walking into a garage. We are about to explore the landscaping and entryway secrets that mask the garage's former identity and create a true sense of arrival. But before we get to the aesthetics, we have to look at the fire-rated drywall requirements that could save your life and your property. Fire safety is not a suggestion in residential construction. It is a rigid legal requirement that governs every inch of your garage conversion. In 2026, the International Residential Code is extremely specific about the separation between a dwelling unit and what used to be a vehicle storage area. If your 2-car garage is attached to your primary residence, you are required to install a fire-rated assembly on the wall that separates the 2 spaces. Historically, this has meant one layer of 5/8" Type X gypsum board applied to the garage side. However, when you are converting the entire garage into a living space, the rules shift. You are essentially creating a new fire envelope. Type X drywall contains glass fibers and other non-combustible materials that allow it to withstand high heat for a specified period, usually 1 hour, giving occupants time to evacuate. Imagine a homeowner in Nashville, Tennessee, named David. David is converting his attached garage into a studio for his daughter, who is returning home from college in 2026. During the inspection process, the local building official notes that the ceiling of the garage, which sits directly below David's master bedroom, must also be fire-rated. This means David cannot simply use standard half-inch drywall. He must use the thicker, heavier Type X material and ensure that every seam is taped in mud to create a continuous fire barrier. If David has any penetrations in that ceiling, such as recessed lighting or HVAC vents, those fixtures must also be fire-rated or enclosed in fireproof boxes. This is a critical safety step because, in the event of a fire in the lower unit, you want to prevent the spread of smoke and flames to the sleeping quarters above. Step by step, the fireproofing process begins with the structural inspection of the framing. Any gaps between the studs and the top plates must be filled with fireblock foam or mineral wool insulation. Then the Type X drywall is installed using specific screw patterns required by code, typically every 8 inches along the edges. This ensures that the drywall remains attached to the studs, even under intense heat. Case studies from urban fire departments highlight that properly installed fire-rated assemblies are the single most effective way to prevent total property loss in multi-unit conversions. Once the shell is fire-safe, we can finally look at the internal architecture of the space. The floor plan of a standard American 2-car garage is roughly 20 feet by 20 feet, yielding 400 square feet. This is the exact size of many high-end hotel suites or urban micro-apartments. To make this feel like a home rather than a box, you must implement the concept of zonation. In a 400 square foot ADU, every square inch must perform double duty. The most successful 2026 layouts avoid building full-height walls to separate the bedroom from the living area. Instead, professional designers use what is known as a partial-height pony wall, or a double-sided bookshelf. This allows the eye to travel the full 20-foot width of the building, which prevents the claustrophobic feeling common in poorly designed conversions. Consider the kitchen placement. In a 2-car garage, you generally have 2 choices: the galley kitchen or the L-shaped corner kitchen. The galley kitchen, featuring 2 parallel counters, is highly efficient for cooking, but can act as a hallway that eats up the center of your floor plan. The L-shaped kitchen, tucked into a corner, is the preferred choice for 2026 conversions because it opens up the remainder of the room for a living and dining area. When designing this kitchen, the size of your appliances is your biggest variable. While a standard American refrigerator is 36 inches wide, in an ADU, you should look at European-style 24-inch models. These are slimmer and taller, providing ample storage for 1 or 2 people without dominating the wall. Historical trends show that renters and homeowners are increasingly comfortable with smaller, high-efficiency appliances if it means more counter space for food preparation. Furthermore, the lighting in the kitchen can make or break the ADU's atmosphere. Because you are working with a small footprint, shadows can make the space feel dark and cramped. Step-by-step detailing for a professional kitchen involves 3 layers of light: ambient light from recessed cans in the ceiling, task lighting via under-cabinet LED strips, and accent lighting over the island or dining nook. This creates depth and makes the kitchen feel like a distinct room within the larger open plan. By using the wet wall strategy we discussed earlier, you will likely have your kitchen sink sharing a wall with the bathroom. This allows for a single consolidated plumbing stack, which reduces the complexity of the drain and vent system. Now let's address the exterior, because how the unit looks from the driveway is just as important as how it looks from the inside. This is the challenge of the garage facade. If you leave the large concrete driveway leading straight up to a wall where a garage door used to be, it looks like a conversion. To solve this, 2026 landscaping trends focus on the entry sequence. Imagine if David in Nashville didn't just wall off the garage door, but instead built a small, raised wooden porch or a stone stoop in front of the new entrance. By adding large potted planters, a small pergola, or even a low decorative fence, you can visually break the driveway. You are effectively telling the brain that this is no longer a place for cars. It is a place for people. Using permeable pavers or gravel to replace a portion of the old concrete driveway can also soften the look and improve drainage. This is a common requirement in many U.S. cities to manage stormwater runoff. By integrating greenery right up to the threshold of the ADU, you create a private outdoor zone that makes the 400 square foot interior feel much larger. Case studies show that units with a dedicated outdoor space, even if it is just a 6 by 10 foot patio, can fetch 20 to 30% more in rental value compared to units that open directly onto a parking pad. The final element of the entryway is the door itself. In a 2-car conversion, your front door is often the primary source of natural light for the living area. Choosing a full-light glass door with an internal blind system provides both light and privacy. When you pair this with a smart lock and a video doorbell, you are providing the security and modern convenience that 2026 tenants expect. But as you move inside from that beautiful new entrance, you encounter the one room that most homeowners completely undersize: the bathroom. Many people try to squeeze a bathroom into a 5 by 5 foot square to save space. This is a mistake. A cramped bathroom feels cheap and is difficult to use. Instead, the move is to create a luxury 3/4 bath with a walk-in shower rather than a cramped tub. By using large format tiles and a glass shower partition, you maintain the visual flow of the room. We also have to address the laundry dilemma. In a 2-car ADU, you cannot afford a dedicated laundry room, but you absolutely need laundry facilities. The solution lies in the closet stack, or the all-in-one ventless washer-dryer combo. But how do you handle the venting and the noise of a washing machine in such a small space? And more importantly, how do you manage the storage of clothing and household items without cluttering the main living area? The secret is in the storage wall, a floor-to-ceiling cabinetry system that hides everything from the water heater to the winter coats. This is where the engineering of the ADU meets the art of living. In the next part, we are going to dive deep into the storage wall blueprints and the exact specifications for the luxury bathroom that makes an ADU feel like a custom home. We will also tackle the massive issue of soundproofing between the main house and the attached garage, because if you can hear every footstep and conversation through the wall, the conversion is a failure in privacy. The science of acoustics is the next layer of our masterclass. Acoustics are the most frequently ignored component of a two-car garage conversion, yet they determine the long-term viability of the living space. If you are converting an attached garage, you share a common wall with the primary residence. Without professional sound mitigation, that wall acts like a speaker diaphragm, transmitting every television show, conversation, and footstep from the main house directly into the ADU. In 2026, the standard for a high-quality conversion is achieving a sound transmission class, or STC, rating of at least 50. A standard interior wall typically has an STC of around 33, which allows loud speech to be heard clearly. To move from a garage to a luxury dwelling, you must implement acoustic decoupling. Imagine a homeowner in Portland, Oregon, named Elena. Elena converted her attached two-car garage into a quiet home office and guest suite. Initially, she simply used standard insulation and drywall. Within a week, she realized she could hear the kitchen blender and the hallway vacuuming from the main house as if they were in the same room. To fix this, she had to utilize resilient channels. These are thin metal rails used to detach the drywall from the wood studs. By screwing the drywall into the channels rather than the studs, you break the direct path of vibration. Elena also swapped out standard fiberglass bats for mineral wool insulation, which is much denser and specifically designed for sound absorption. Step by step, the acoustic assembly involves filling the stud bay with 3.5 inches of mineral wool, installing resilient channels horizontally across the studs, and then hanging 2 layers of 5/8-inch drywall with a bead of acoustic sealant, often referred to as green glue, sandwiched between the layers. This creates a massive dampened barrier that provides the privacy necessary for 2 separate households to coexist on one property. Beyond the shared wall, we must address the storage wall. In a 400 square foot footprint, traditional closets are a luxury you cannot afford to waste. Instead of building framed-in closets with swing doors that eat up floor space, 2026 design trends favor the integrated storage wall. This is a floor-to-ceiling cabinetry system, usually built along the most stable interior wall. Imagine if Elena in Portland had a 20-foot wall dedicated entirely to storage. Behind a series of sleek, handle-less doors, she can hide her clothing, a fold-down desk, the electrical subpanel, and the water heater. By keeping all storage on one vertical plane, the rest of the room remains open and uncluttered. Historical trends show that ADUs with integrated, built-in storage feel significantly more high-end and are easier to keep clean than those relying on standalone dressers and wardrobes. This storage wall can also serve as the housing for your laundry solution. In a 2-car garage conversion, a dedicated laundry room is practically impossible. However, neglecting laundry facilities is a mistake that limits the rental potential or the convenience of the space. The 2026 solution is the ventless heat pump washer-dryer combination unit. These machines are a technical marvel for ADUs because they do not require a 4-inch vent hole through your exterior wall, which preserves the building's thermal envelope and acoustic integrity. They plug into a standard 120-volt or 240-volt outlet and drain into the same gray water line as your kitchen sink. If you prefer a stacked unit for speed, you must build a laundry closet that is lined with sound dampening panels to prevent the vibration of the spin cycle from shaking the entire ADU. Step by step, you install a deep plastic drain pan beneath the washer, connect a braided stainless steel water line to prevent bursts, and ensure the closet has a solid core door to muffle the mechanical noise. Now let's move into the bathroom, which is the cornerstone of the conversion's luxury feel. In 2026, the trend has shifted away from the standard 5-foot tub shower combo. Instead, developers are opting for the walk-in curbless shower. By sloping the subfloor toward a linear drain, you create a seamless transition from the bathroom floor into the shower area. This makes a small bathroom feel twice as large because the floor plane is uninterrupted. Using large format tiles, think 24 by 48 inches, minimizes grout lines, which reduces maintenance and creates a clean, modern aesthetic. Case studies indicate that a bathroom with a glass partition, a floating vanity, and a wall-mounted toilet creates an upscale experience that rivals a boutique hotel. A wall-mounted toilet is particularly effective in a garage conversion because the plumbing is housed within the wall cavity, saving several inches of floor space and making the floor much easier to mop. To make this bathroom truly functional, you must consider the ventilation. Garages often have high humidity levels, and a small ADU can quickly develop moisture issues from showering. You need a high CFM, ultra-quiet exhaust fan that is hardwired to a humidity sensor. This sensor ensures the fan runs until the air is dry, even if the occupant forgets to turn it on. In 2026, many homeowners are also integrating small-scale radiant floor heating mats beneath the tile. Because the garage is sitting on a cold concrete slab, a heated bathroom floor provides a level of comfort that makes the unit feel permanent and thoughtfully designed, rather than a converted utility space. Lighting is the final layer that defines the ambience of these spaces. In a two-car garage, you are often dealing with limited window openings due to property line setbacks. This means your artificial lighting must do the heavy lifting. The secret is layered lighting with adjustable color temperatures. You want 4-inch recessed LED gimbals in the ceiling for general illumination, but you also need warm, eye-level lighting through sconces or pendant lights. Historically, garage lighting was a single, harsh fluorescent tube. In a 2026 ADU, you use smart dimmers that allow the occupant to shift the lighting from a bright, 4000K daylight for morning tasks to a soft, 2700K amber for evening relaxation. This helps regulate the circadian rhythm of the inhabitants, which is essential in a smaller living environment where you spend a large portion of your day in one room. Consider the case study of a conversion in Charleston, South Carolina. The homeowners used a monochromatic color palette with light oak flooring and white walls, but they used black hardware and lighting fixtures to provide contrast. By installing a skylight directly over the shower and another over the kitchen island, they reduced their reliance on artificial light by 60% during the day. This is the level of detail that transforms a garage from a dark box into a bright, airy sanctuary. But as we master the interior, we have to look upward. Most people see a garage ceiling as the end of the project, but in 2026, the roof structure is being used for more than just keeping out the rain. We are seeing a surge in lofted designs that utilize the dead space in the rafters for sleeping quarters or long-term storage, effectively doubling the usable square footage without expanding the footprint. However, this requires a deep understanding of structural load-bearing capacities. Can your existing garage walls support the weight of a second floor or a heavy storage loft? What happens to your HVAC requirements when you double the volume of air in the room by opening up the ceiling? And perhaps most importantly, how do you handle the stairs or ladder access without destroying your open floor plan? We are about to enter the structural engineering phase of this masterclass. We will look at the exact beam specifications needed to remove center supports and how to turn your roof into a living roof or a platform for a massive solar array. The roof is the most underutilized asset in a garage conversion, and we are going to show you how to exploit it for maximum value. In the next part, we tackle the physics of the loft and the structural secrets that allow you to go vertical when you can't go horizontal. This is where your 400 square foot garage starts to feel like an 800 square foot estate. We will break down the ladder versus staircase debate and the safety codes that govern mezzanine levels in 2026. The vertical expansion of a two-car garage is the ultimate level up in the 2026 ADU market, but it is also where the most structural failures occur. Most American garages built in the mid to late 20th century were engineered with a specific limited purpose: to hold a roof over two vehicles. The trusses or ceiling joists were often designed only to resist the outward thrust of the rafters and to support a light layer of drywall or some minor storage. When you decide to add a loft for sleeping or a heavy-duty mezzanine for office space, you are fundamentally changing the load path of the entire building. You are moving from a dead load, the weight of the building itself, to a live load, which includes the weight of people, furniture, and movement. Imagine a homeowner in Salt Lake City, Utah, named Robert. Robert has a detached 20 by 20 garage with a high-pitched gable roof. In 2026, he decides to build a 200 square foot sleeping loft to make his ADU conversion more attractive to long-term tenants. Robert's first mistake is assuming he can just lay 3/4-inch plywood across his existing ceiling joists. A structural engineer informs him that his current 2x6 joists, spaced 24 inches on center, are nowhere near sufficient to meet the local residential code requirement of 30 to 40 pounds per square foot for a living floor. If Robert had proceeded without reinforcement, the floor would have sagged, and in a worst-case scenario, the exterior walls could have bowed outward under the weight, compromising the entire structure. To do this correctly step by step, you must perform a structural analysis of the foundation and the walls first. Most garage slabs are 4 inches thick, but the perimeter footing, the thickened part of the concrete under the exterior walls, must be verified to ensure it can handle the additional vertical pressure. If the footing is sufficient, the next step is usually the installation of a LVL or laminated veneer lumber ridge beam or new, deeper floor joists. In many 2026 case studies, builders are using steel I-beams or parallel strand lumber to span the 20-foot width of the garage without needing a center support post. This preserves the open floor plan below while creating a rock-solid platform above. Robert's solution in Salt Lake City involves sistering his existing rafters with 2x8s and installing a new floor system comprised of 2x10 joists spaced 12 inches on center. This created a rigid, safe mezzanine that met all local safety standards. The second major hurdle of the vertical conversion is the access. This is the great ladder versus staircase debate. In 2026, the International Residential Code has very specific rules for what constitutes a legal loft versus a second story. If your loft is less than 70 square feet or has a ceiling height below 5 feet, many jurisdictions allow for a ship's ladder or even a vertical ladder. However, historical trends in the rental market suggest that units with a proper staircase are significantly more desirable and safer for aging residents or families. The problem is that a standard staircase with a 7-inch rise and a 10-inch run can eat up nearly 40 square feet of your 400 square foot ground floor. The 2026 design solution for this is the storage staircase. This is a custom-built set of stairs where every riser and every side panel is a drawer or a cabinet. Imagine if Robert's stairs were located next to the kitchen. The lower stairs could house a pull-out pantry, while the higher stairs could store seasonal clothing or luggage. This turns a space-hogging necessity into a primary storage asset. If space is truly at a premium, some homeowners are opting for a spiral staircase. While these have a much smaller footprint, typically a 5-foot diameter circle, they are notoriously difficult for moving furniture or even a mattress up to the loft. Case studies show that a well-designed, straight-run storage staircase along one wall is often the most efficient use of the square footage. Furthermore, we have to talk about the mezzanine safety code. Any loft or elevated platform in a 2026 residential unit must have a guardrail that is at least 36 inches high, with balusters spaced no more than 4 inches apart. To keep the space feeling open, many high-end conversions use tempered glass panels or stainless steel cable railings. This provides the required safety without creating a visual wall that makes the ceiling feel lower. If the loft is intended for sleeping, you must also provide an egress window. This is a non-negotiable life safety requirement. In the event of a fire on the ground floor, the person in the loft must have a direct way out to the exterior. This window must meet specific height, width, and square footage requirements to allow a firefighter in full gear to enter or an occupant to exit easily. Now, consider the thermal dynamics of a vaulted ceiling with a loft. Heat rises. In a standard garage with a flat ceiling, the temperature is relatively uniform. Once you open up that ceiling and add a mezzanine, the loft will naturally be 5 to 10 degrees warmer than the ground floor. In 2026, smart HVAC design for an ADU involves a multi-zone mini-split system, or the strategic placement of a ceiling fan to circulate the air. Without this, your loft could become an unusable sauna in the summer months, while the kitchen below remains chilly. Historical trends indicate that homeowners who invest in high-quality spray foam insulation for the roof deck, rather than the floor of the attic, create a much more stable climate for the entire volume of the building. Speaking of the roof deck, there is a burgeoning trend in 2026 across the United States for the living roof or the rooftop deck. If your garage has a flat roof or a low-slope roof, you are sitting on 400 square feet of potential outdoor living space. Imagine if Robert in Salt Lake City didn't just build an internal loft, but instead reinforced his roof to support a deck with a view of the mountains. This requires a much higher level of structural engineering and a very sophisticated waterproofing system. You are essentially building a bathtub on top of your house that must drain perfectly every time it rains. Case studies of rooftop decks in high-density areas like Brooklyn or San Francisco show that these features can increase the desirability of a small ADU by an incredible margin, as they provide the private outdoor space that most urban dwellers crave. However, the cost and complexity of a rooftop deck are significant. You have to consider the weight of the decking material, the furniture, and the live load of people. You also have to navigate the privacy laws of your neighborhood. If your new roof deck looks directly into your neighbor's bedroom window, you may face legal challenges or be required to install tall privacy screens, which can add wind load issues to the structure. This is why the 2026 Masterclass approach is to weigh the cost-to-benefit ratio of vertical expansion carefully. While a loft adds square footage, a roof deck adds lifestyle value. Both require a permit, a professional plan, and a structural sign-off. As we move from the structural skeleton of the roof and the loft, we have to look at the skin of the building. In 2026, the exterior of a garage conversion is no longer just about matching the house. It is about performance. We are entering the era of the high-performance envelope. This includes the windows, the doors, and the siding materials that will determine your monthly utility bills for the next 30 years. But there is one specific element of the exterior that can either make your ADU look like a professional cottage or a desperate DIY project: the window-to-wall ratio. How do you decide where to punch new holes in your garage walls without compromising the sheer strength of the building? And how do you do it in a way that provides maximum light without sacrificing the privacy of your backyard? The next part of our masterclass is going to break down the science of window placement and the specific types of glazing that are now required by 2026 energy codes. We are going to look at the hidden world of shear walls and the metal strapping that keeps your garage from collapsing in a high wind event once you start cutting into the studs. This is where the beauty of the design meets the brutal reality of physics. We are about to look at the envelope and the entry points that define the character of your new home. When you begin cutting into the walls of a standard two-car garage to add windows and doors, you are not just making aesthetic choices. You are modifying the sheer strength of the building. In many parts of the United States, especially in seismic zones or high-wind coastal regions, the garage acts as a structural box that prevents the house from twisting or collapsing under lateral loads. Historically, the large garage door opening was already the weakest point in the structure. By removing that door and framing in a new wall, you have an opportunity to actually strengthen the building, but only if you understand the science of shear walls. Imagine a homeowner in Miami, Florida, named Carlos. In 2026, Carlos is converting his detached two-car garage into a high-end rental unit. He wants a wall of glass facing his pool, which means he needs to remove a significant portion of the original structural studs. His local building department requires a specific shear wall calculation. This involves using structural wood panels, such as 15/32 OSB or plywood, fastened with a very specific nailing pattern, usually every 6 inches along the edges and 12 inches in the field. Carlos also has to install hold-down brackets, which are heavy steel anchors that bolt the wood framing directly into the concrete foundation. This ensures that in a hurricane, the ADU remains tethered to the earth. Without these technical details, the building might look beautiful, but it could fail under the first sign of extreme weather. Step by step, the process for creating a high-performance envelope begins with the selection of your glazing. In 2026, the energy codes in many states have shifted toward triple-pane glass or high-performance low-E coatings as the minimum standard. For an ADU conversion, the window-to-wall ratio is critical, because you only have about 800 to 900 square feet of total wall surface area. Every window you add significantly impacts the thermal performance of the unit. Professional designers use a strategy called solar orientation. You place your largest windows on the south-facing side of the garage to take advantage of passive solar heating in the winter, while using deep overhangs or awnings to block the harsh overhead sun in the summer. Case studies from the Pacific Northwest show that units utilizing clear-story windows, narrow windows placed high on the wall near the roofline, provide excellent natural light while maintaining 100% of the privacy for the occupant. This is a game-changer for two-car garage conversions where the unit might be only 10 feet away from a neighbor's fence. By placing windows above eye level, you flood the ceiling with light, which reflects down into the living space, making the 400-square-foot footprint feel expansive rather than enclosed. Furthermore, we must address the siding and the moisture management system. When you convert a garage, you are often working with older siding that may not have a modern house wrap or rain screen system behind it. In 2026, the best practice is to strip the old siding and install a high-quality weather-resistive barrier, or WRB. This is a membrane that allows water vapor to escape from the inside, but prevents liquid water from entering from the outside. If you simply paint over old T1-11 siding or add a layer of vinyl over uninsulated wood, you are inviting rot and structural decay. Consider the case of a conversion in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The homeowner used a rain screen system, which creates a small air gap between the WRB and the exterior siding. This allows any moisture that gets behind the siding to drain away and the wall assembly to dry out. In a climate with heavy snow and freeze-thaw cycles, this detail is what separates a 30-year building from a 5-year mistake. For siding materials, historical trends in 2026 show a massive move toward fiber cement or thermally modified wood. These materials offer the aesthetic of traditional wood, but are fire-resistant and rot-proof, which is essential for ADUs that are often built close to property lines where fire codes are most stringent. Now, let's talk about the entry point, the most important psychological element of the ADU. This is where the conversion either feels like a garage or a home. The entry sequence should be distinct from the main house. Imagine if Carlos in Miami added a small gravel path that winds through a garden of native plants, leading to a wooden deck that sits 3 inches above the driveway level. This physical transition, stepping up onto a different material, signals to the brain that you have arrived at a residence. Using a bold color for the front door or adding high-quality exterior lighting, such as hooded copper sconces, provides a sense of permanence and luxury. The entry door itself in 2026 is often a high-security, insulated steel or fiberglass unit with a multi-point locking system. This is particularly important for ADUs used as short-term rentals, where ease of access and security are top priorities. But once you step through that door, you encounter the floor-to-ceiling transition we mentioned earlier. In a garage, the floor is usually several inches lower than the threshold of the door. This creates a step-down that can feel awkward. The professional solution is to build a small interior landing, or to raise the entire floor of the garage with the sleeper system to match the exterior grade. This creates a flush entry, which is not only more aesthetic, but also meets ADA accessibility standards, making the unit much more versatile for aging in place or for tenants with mobility challenges. Beyond the physical structure, we have to consider the impact of the ADU on the overall site. This includes the management of utilities that are often buried beneath the driveway. If you are adding a new sewer line, you may have to cut a trench through your existing concrete. Instead of just patching that concrete with a messy gray line, 2026 trends involve using decorative concrete saw cutting or adding a ribbon of pavers that makes the trench look like an intentional design feature. This is the level of detail that elevates a project. Historical trends in U.S. real estate suggest that a garage conversion is most valuable when it feels like a tiny cottage rather than a finished garage. This means avoiding the big blank wall where the garage door used to be. Even if you don't use glass, you can use architectural features like board and batten siding, decorative shutters, or a small cantilevered roof to break up the massing of the building. This makes the ADU look like it was always part of the original architectural plan of the property. As we master the exterior envelope and the entry sequence, we are left with the final, most complex piece of the puzzle, the finishing. This is where the budget often evaporates. People spend all their money on the structure and utilities, only to end up with cheap flooring and basic lighting that makes the space feel like a dormitory. In 2026, the masterclass finish is about choosing 3 high-impact areas to spend your remaining capital. This usually includes the kitchen backsplash, the bathroom hardware, and the flooring. But what happens when the city inspector arrives and tells you that your beautiful new ADU requires a separate fire sprinkler system because it is located too far from the street? Or what if your insurance company refuses to cover the new unit because it doesn't have a separate address? These are the administrative and legal finishing touches that can derail your project at the 99% mark. We are about to dive into the world of final inspections, occupancy permits, and the crucial insurance and tax adjustments that happen the moment you finish your conversion. We are going to look at the paperwork that turns your construction site into a legal, bankable asset. In the next part, we tackle the final 10% hurdle, the inspections you must pass, and the specific ways to document your build so that you are protected for the life of the property. We will also look at the impact of an ADU on your property tax assessment and how to prepare for the inevitable visit from the county assessor. This is the part of the masterclass where we secure your investment. The final inspection is the moment of truth in any 2-car garage conversion, and in 2026, the scrutiny from local building departments has never been higher. Most homeowners assume that once the drywall is up and the appliances are plugged in, they are ready to move in. However, The gap between a finished-looking room and a legally habitable accessory dwelling unit is often a mountain of paperwork and specific life safety signatures. To secure your investment, you must understand that the certificate of occupancy is your most valuable asset. Without it, you cannot legally rent the unit, you cannot include the square footage in a future home sale, and your insurance provider may have grounds to deny a claim if an incident occurs within the unpermitted space. Imagine a homeowner in Charlotte, North Carolina, named Jennifer. Jennifer spent the better part of 2026 transforming her detached two-car garage into a modern studio. She followed the plans, but during the final walkthrough, the inspector noticed that the smoke detectors in the ADU were not interconnected with the smoke detectors in the main house. Because her garage was within 10 feet of the primary residence, local fire codes required a synchronized alarm system. This meant Jennifer had to reopen small sections of her finished ceiling to run low-voltage wiring, or install a specific wireless mesh system approved by the fire marshal. This single oversight delayed her move-in date by 3 weeks and cost an additional $1,200 in labor and materials. Step by step, the final permitting phase involves a series of specialized inspections. First is the structural final, where the inspector verifies that all hold-downs, shear wall nailing patterns, and roofing attachments match the approved engineering stamps. Next is the electrical final. The inspector will not just look at the outlets. They will test every GFCI and AFCI breaker to ensure they trip at the correct millisecond interval. In 2026, many jurisdictions also require a blower door test. This is a diagnostic tool used to measure the airtightness of the building envelope. A powerful fan is mounted to the entry door frame, depressurizing the ADU to reveal any hidden air leaks around windows, top plates, or plumbing penetrations. If your garage conversion is too drafty, you may be required to add more weather stripping or foam sealing to meet the energy efficiency standards of the 2026 Energy Conservation Code. Historical trends in the United States show that the addition of a permitted ADU often triggers a reassessment of property taxes. This is a nuance many YouTube tutorials gloss over. When you add 400 square feet of habitable, climate-controlled space to your lot, the county tax assessor sees an increase in the contributory value of your property. However, it is important to note that in many states, such as California under certain provisions of Proposition 13 or similar laws in other regions, the reassessment may only apply to the value of the new construction itself, rather than a full market value reassessment of the entire property. Case studies suggest that while your annual tax bill will likely increase, the potential outcomes of the rental income or the increase in total property equity often far outweigh the tax adjustment. Jennifer in Charlotte, for instance, saw her property taxes rise by $800 a year, but she was able to generate $1,800 a month in rental income, creating a significant net positive. Beyond taxes, you must proactively manage your homeowner's insurance. A standard policy for a single-family home does not automatically cover a second kitchen or a tenant living in a converted garage. In 2026, insurance companies are becoming more granular with their coverage. You will likely need to add a landlord policy or a specific endorsement for a secondary suite. If you are using the space for a family member, you still need to notify your agent to ensure the replacement cost of the structure reflects the high-end finishes you just installed. If you ignore this and a pipe bursts or a kitchen fire occurs, you could find yourself underinsured, receiving a payout for a storage garage instead of a luxury ADU. Furthermore, we must address the separate address phenomenon. In 2026, many cities are encouraging homeowners to register their ADU with the separate Unit B or 1/2 address. This is not just for mail delivery. It is a critical step for emergency services. If an occupant in the ADU calls 911, the first responders need to know exactly which building on the property they are entering. This often requires the installation of a second, lighted address sign visible from the street. Historically, homes with clearly defined, separate units have a higher resale value because they appeal to a broader range of buyers, including multi-generational families and professional investors who value the turnkey nature of a dual-address property. Now, imagine the impact of your conversion on the local utility grid. We touched on the load calculations for electricity earlier, but in the final phase, you must consider the water meter. Some municipalities in the U.S. charge impact fees for new ADUs to offset the strain on the city's sewer and water infrastructure. In 2026, these fees can range from zero in ADU-friendly cities, like Seattle, to over $10,000 in more restrictive jurisdictions. However, A growing trend is the capacity charge waiver for smaller units under 750 square feet. By keeping your two-car garage conversion within its original footprint, you are often eligible for these waivers, saving you a massive amount of upfront capital. As you navigate these final bureaucratic hurdles, you should also be documenting every step of the process. In 2026, savvy homeowners are creating a digital home binder. This includes photos of the plumbing and electrical lines before the drywall went up, copies of all signed-off inspection cards, and the manuals for every appliance and HVAC component. This level of transparency is a powerful tool when it comes time to sell. When a potential buyer sees that the garage conversion wasn't a weekend DIY, but a fully permitted, professionally inspected development, their confidence in the property's value increases. We have explored the bones, the skin, the interior flow, and the legal safety nets of the two-car garage conversion. But as we approach the completion of this masterclass, we have to look at the living experience. How does the ADU perform after 6 months of occupancy? What are the common wear and tear issues unique to small-scale living on a concrete slab? And most importantly, how do you handle the shared space dynamics of parking, trash collection, and privacy when two households are living on one suburban lot? The final 2 parts of our deep dive will move away from the construction site and into the management of the asset. We are going to look at the privacy landscaping techniques that use vertical greenery to create invisible walls between you and your tenant. We will also discuss the smart home integrations that allow you to monitor the ADU systems without intruding on the occupant's space. But first, we have to address the parking pivot. If you've taken away the garage, where do the cars go? The answer involves a clever reimagining of your front yard that doesn't violate your local curb appeal ordinances. In the next part, we tackle the external logistics and the long-term maintenance of your new ADU. We are moving from building the house to building the lifestyle. The loss of a two-car garage is often the biggest psychological hurdle for American homeowners considering an ADU conversion in 2026. You are trading a storage space for a living space, but the vehicles still exist, and the local street parking regulations have likely become stricter over the last few years. To make this work, you must execute the parking pivot. This is the strategic redesign of your front or side yard to accommodate off-street parking without making your home look like a commercial parking lot. Historically, many cities required a one-to-one replacement of parking spots, meaning if you converted a two-car garage, you had to provide 2 new paved spots on your property. While many states have relaxed these mandates to encourage housing density, the practical reality of suburban life still necessitates a solution for your own vehicles and those of your potential tenants. Imagine a homeowner in San Jose, California, named Michael. In 2026, Michael completed his garage ADU, but he soon realized that having 4 cars, 2 for his family and 2 for his tenants, parked haphazardly on the curb was creating tension with his neighbors and ruining the aesthetic of his property. Michael's solution was the installation of a ribbon driveway, also known as Hollywood strips. Instead of a massive heat-absorbing slab of solid concrete, he laid 2 parallel tracks of pavers with a strip of drought-tolerant grass or creeping thyme in the center. This reduced the visual mass of the parking area, while providing a stable, permeable surface for the vehicles. Step by step, Michael excavated the designated parking area to a depth of 8 inches, laid a compacted gravel base, and used high-strength permeable pavers that allow rainwater to soak directly into the ground, a key requirement for many 2026 stormwater management codes. Case studies from across the United States show that site logistics extend far beyond just cars. You have to consider the trash and recycling choreography. A 2-car garage conversion effectively doubles the waste output of a single-family lot. If you have 4 or 6 large bins sitting on the sidewalk every Tuesday, the curb appeal of your property vanishes. Professional ADU developers in 2026 design integrated trash enclosures. These are small, aesthetically pleasing structures built with the same siding and roofing materials as the ADU, tucked away behind a gate or a privacy screen. This keeps the bins out of sight and prevents the common tenant-landlord conflict over whose turn it is to pull the bins back from the curb. Privacy landscaping is the next layer of the lifestyle transition. When you have 2 households living 20 feet apart, the fishbowl effect is a real concern. If your ADU living room window looks directly into your main house kitchen window, neither party will feel at home. In 2026, we have moved beyond the standard 6-foot cedar fence, which can feel like a prison wall in a small backyard. Instead, we use vertical greenery. Imagine if Michael in San Jose used a combination of clumping bamboo and narrow planters or a row of Italian cypress trees. These provide a dense, evergreen screen that can grow to 12 or 15 feet, effectively blocking the line of sight between the two units without taking up more than 2 feet of horizontal ground space. Furthermore, the concept of a shared outdoor zone versus a private outdoor zone must be established. Historical trends indicate that ADUs with a clearly defined, private patio or pocket garden are significantly more successful as long-term rentals. This doesn't require a massive investment. It can be as simple as using a different ground material, such as pea gravel or Mexican beach pebbles, to demarcate the tenant's space. By adding a small bistro set and some overhead string lights, you create an outdoor room that makes the interior of the garage conversion feel less isolated. Maintenance of a garage ADU in 2026 also requires a shift in how you view your property's systems. Because the unit is likely on a separate electrical subpanel but shares a main water line, you need a clear protocol for utility management. Smart home integrations have become the standard for professional conversions. Installing a smart water leak detector on the main line to the ADU can prevent a minor plumbing issue from becoming a catastrophic flood while you are away. Similarly, smart thermostats allow you to monitor the temperature in the ADU to ensure that pipes aren't freezing in the winter, even if the unit is temporarily vacant. Consider the case study of a homeowner in Atlanta, Georgia, who integrated a whole house energy monitoring system. This allowed her to see exactly how much power the ADU's mini-split and water heater were drawing in real time. In 2026, this data is invaluable for accurately splitting utility costs or simply understanding the carbon footprint of your property. However, maintenance isn't just about the high-tech systems. It's about the physical structure of the conversion. Garage slabs, even when leveled and sealed, can be subject to different settlement patterns than the main house. You must perform an annual inspection of the exterior caulking and the weather stripping around the new large-scale doors and windows we discussed earlier. Because garages are often closer to the ground level than the main house, they are more susceptible to moisture intrusion and pest issues if the perimeter isn't perfectly maintained. Step by step, your post-construction maintenance checklist should include checking the condensate drain line of the mini-split HVAC every 6 months to prevent clogs, inspecting the roof-to-wall flashing if the garage is attached to the house, and ensuring that the grading of the surrounding landscaping is still pulling water away from the foundation. If you converted a detached garage, you also have to monitor the no man's land, the 3 to 5 feet of space between the ADU and the property line. This area often becomes a magnet for weeds and debris, which can lead to moisture traps against the siding. Using a weed barrier and a thick layer of inorganic mulch, like crushed slate, can keep this area clean and maintenance-free for years. The lifestyle of a two-car garage conversion is about maximizing the utility of every square foot of the lot. We are seeing a move toward the outdoor kitchen, or shared laundry pavilion, in higher-end multi-generational setups. If you didn't have room for a full laundry stack inside the 400-square-foot ADU, some homeowners are building a small, insulated utility shed between the two buildings that houses a high-capacity washer and dryer for both units to share. This preserves the internal square footage of the ADU for living space while providing the necessary amenities. As we reach the 9th part of this masterclass, we have covered everything from the first crack of the jackhammer to the last leaf of the privacy screen. You now have the technical, legal, and logistical framework to execute a conversion that is both a beautiful home and a resilient financial asset. But there is one final piece of the puzzle that most people are too afraid to talk about: the exit strategy. Whether you are building this for your parents, your children, or for the rental market, how does this ADU impact the eventual sale of your home? How do you appraise a property with 2 dwellings in a market that is still catching up to the ADU revolution? In the final part of our masterclass, we are going to look at the valuation victory. We will analyze the latest 2026 data on ADU-equipped home sales across the United States. We will show you how to work with appraisers to ensure they don't just treat your ADU as a finished garage, but as a fully realized second home. We will also wrap up with the ultimate design checklist, the 20 items that must be perfect before you hand over the keys. This is the conclusion of the deep dive, where we turn your construction project into a legacy asset. We are about to look at the big picture of your new residential reality. The transition from a construction project to a legacy asset culminates in the valuation phase. In 2026, the American real estate market has begun to formalize how accessory dwelling units are appraised, moving away from the era where they were viewed merely as finished basements or hobby rooms. To capture the full value of your 2-car garage conversion, you must understand the distinction between cost, price, and value. Historical trends in high-density markets like Denver, Colorado, and Arlington, Virginia, suggest that while a conversion might cost between $80,000 and $120,000, the added equity to the property often reflects a multiple of the square footage value of the primary residence, provided the unit is fully permitted and legally habitable. Imagine a homeowner in Denver named Thomas. In 2026, Thomas decided to sell his primary home, which featured a meticulously converted 400-square-foot ADU. The traditional appraisal process might have initially compared his home to other three-bedroom houses in the neighborhood. However, because Thomas had maintained a meticulous digital binder of his permits, architectural plans, and a record of the rental income the unit had generated over the previous 2 years, he was able to provide the appraiser with a different set of data. This is what we call the income approach to valuation. Instead of just looking at the sticks and bricks, the appraiser considers the net present value of the future rental income the ADU can produce. By documenting a consistent monthly income of $2,000, Thomas's property was appraised significantly higher than the standard single-family homes on his block. Step by step, preparing for a valuation victory involves several key actions. First, you must request an appraiser who is specifically familiar with ADU Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines, which were updated in recent years to better reflect the utility of secondary suites. Second, you should provide a comparative market analysis that specifically includes other properties with permitted ADUs, even if those properties are slightly outside your immediate neighborhood. Third, you must highlight the separate utility metering and the high-performance envelope features we discussed in earlier parts of this masterclass. An ADU that costs only $50 a month to heat and cool is a much more valuable asset than one that is a drain on the main house's utility bill. We must also address the long-term impact on your property's marketability. Case studies indicate that homes with ADUs appeal to 3 distinct buyer personas in 2026. First is the multi-generational family, looking for a place for an aging parent or a recent college graduate. Second is the house hacker, a buyer who intends to live in the main house while the ADU tenant pays a significant portion of the mortgage. Third is the work-from-home professional who requires a high-end, detached office space that is completely separate from the domestic noise of the main residence. By designing your 2-car garage conversion to serve all 3 of these personas, incorporating a full kitchen for the tenant and high-speed data ports for the professional, you maximize the pool of potential buyers. However, the final design checklist is what ensures you don't fall at the 1-yard line. Before you hand over the keys or list the property, you must perform a surgical review of the finishing touches. This includes the soundproofing we discussed in Part 5. A simple way to test this is the vacuum test. Turn on a vacuum in the ADU and see if it can be heard in the main house's primary bedroom. If the sound transmission is too high, you may need to add additional weather stripping to the shared doors, or even an extra layer of acoustic paneling. Another critical item is the transition between the old driveway and the new entrance. If the concrete is cracked or stained with oil from decades of car storage, it will detract from the luxury feel. In 2026, many homeowners are using concrete resurfacing products or decorative epoxy flakes to give the former garage floor a high-end, gallery-style finish that is both durable and easy to clean. Furthermore, consider the light. We talked about clear-story windows and skylights, but the final layer of lighting should include exterior path lighting. If a tenant or a family member has to walk through a dark backyard to get to their front door, the unit feels like a secondary thought. Step by step, you should install low-voltage LED path lights that are on a photocell or a smart timer. This creates a safe, welcoming entry sequence that is essential for a high-quality living experience. The 2026 lifestyle is also defined by connectivity. Your 2-car garage conversion should not rely on a weak Wi-Fi signal boosted from the main house. A professional conversion includes a dedicated Cat6 or Cat7 Ethernet line run from the main router to an access point inside the ADU. This ensures that the occupant has the bandwidth necessary for high-definition streaming and video conferencing, which are non-negotiable requirements for modern tenants. Historical trends show that units with dedicated high-speed infrastructure are viewed with much higher regard than those with spotty connectivity. As we conclude this deep dive masterclass, it is important to reflect on the historical shift you are participating in. You are not just remodeling a garage, you are contributing to the solution of the American housing shortage. By creating a high-quality, dense living unit on a suburban lot, you are helping to create more walkable, sustainable communities. The potential outcomes of this project go far beyond your own bank account. They represent a reimagining of the American dream, where land is used more efficiently and families can stay connected across generations while maintaining their privacy. The journey from a cluttered storage space to a cash-flowing, equity-building ADU is complex, but as we have shown over these 10 parts, it is a solvable engineering and design challenge. You now have the knowledge of the wet wall strategy, the science of shear walls, the legalities of Type X fire-rated assemblies, and the logistics of the parking pivot. You understand how to navigate the utility grid and how to work with the county assessor. This is the foundation of your success as a small-scale developer. But the world of residential development never stops evolving. While the two-car garage is the most common conversion, there is an entire world of ground-up, detached ADUs and junior ADUs within the existing footprint of the house that offer different advantages and challenges. The strategies we've discussed here are just the beginning of what is possible when you start looking at your property as a platform for growth rather than just a place to sleep. If you found this masterclass valuable, your next step is to download our comprehensive ADU feasibility worksheet, which will help you run the numbers on your specific zip code and lot size. This is the tool that professional builders use to determine if a project is a go or a no-go before the first permit is ever pulled. We are also going to be launching a follow-up series specifically on the interior design secrets of the 500 square foot home, focusing on hidden furniture and the psychology of small space color palettes. The future of housing is compact, efficient, and right in your backyard. We will see you in the next deep dive, where we take these concepts and apply them to the next generation of American home building.